All right, perfect, perfect. So I'm getting this all recorded. So I did obviously do a video here on, business funding, how it all works. I dive deep in this video, but because a lot of you are still interested in these topics, I'm gonna go over everything you guys still need to know when it comes to credit stacking and why strategy is so important when you're looking to get access to business capital because it's a very underestimated topic and people don't realize how quickly you can free yourself from the 9 to 5 just by mastering this. By mastering your credit and learning the credit stacking and learning how to optimize your profile so that you can escape your matrix job. Like this is the fastest way to do it. Like you can do this within a year to 2 years and you could be out of your 9 to 5. But you have to understand that once you get that money, you need to know what to do with it because you want to create ways for you to make money to maintain once you escape. All right. So for me, what I'm gonna cover first is I'm gonna start with just the general basics, right? Because I'm gonna pretend some of you haven't really dove into this topic or weren't part of the last call. So I'm gonna go over some of the basic information that you guys need to know right at the very beginning before you start to think about applying for business funding and trying to navigate through what to do in order to get access to this type of money because it's achievable for any one of you guys. And when I tell you it's a cheat code, like it's way easier and way faster to fix your credit, build it, and get 50 to 100, even 200K in business lines of credit than it is to save it, right? To save that kind of money, and I was working a 9 to 5. I was making 6 figures a year, working corporate America, and you know, it was difficult for me to even try to save up 20K. I had to obviously manage my expenses, cover my rent. I had to be very frugal to try to save that kind of money. Where in this case, understanding how you can leverage your credit to get access to that kind of money is a whole nother ball game, right? Because for people who are looking to really escape, who have a plan, who are ambitious, and they don't mind working because this entrepreneur journey, guys, is not easy. I mean, I work 24/7, although I love it. I love every minute of it, right? I'm free. I get to wake up when I want, do what I want, but I work all the time, nonstop. But I love it. But then it's not work. So you got to be willing to work, right? And two, it's not going to take you that long if you apply all this information. Like for those of you who came in and applied all the credit information and saw the results, it's the same thing with the funding stuff. You come in, learn it, master it, apply it, right? Ask questions. That's what the community's for, and that's what I'm here for, is to help you navigate through a lot of this stuff. But you guys can achieve that relatively quickly if you focus and stay consistent, right? So the basic fundamentals of getting access to this kind of money start with your profile, your credit profile, right? And the credit profile alone is the number one tool because not a lot of you guys have established LLCs and you do not need an established LLC. You do not need to have a LLC for 3, 4 months, 5, 6 months, or even a year. You can have an LLC for 1 month and go and get funding. I've seen people get funding with a LLC that's a week old.
Okay.
All right. So you guys are more than capable of doing it. It's just a matter of understanding where do I start so that I can get to that endpoint. Now, when you're looking at the credit profile, right? In order for you guys to qualify and be
Oh,
considered when it comes to doing this stuff, you have to understand that your credit profile is key because your credit profile is what sets you up to be able to go to the bank and then ask for them to give you access to this, right? So you don't want any negative items. You don't want any late payments. Sometimes you will hear that, one late payment is okay. I think no late payments at all, right? And if you do have any late payments, you may be able to get away with it if your credit profile is stacked, right? If you got like 20 plus accounts on your credit profile with all good history and then one late payment, you'll be able to get away with it. but not everyone has that many accounts on their credit. So I always recommend you have 100% on-time payments. Ideally, you want one or two authorized users. I always encourage people to just work with like a family member or a friend, or you can, go to some of the reputable companies I shared with you guys here. Primary builders, like these are primary trade lines you guys can work with here to get and start building your credit. But then there's also the authorized users here, right? While they're not exactly the cheapest, they're the most reliable. I've used them, right? I currently have trade lines with Tradeline Works, right? And I personally work with Tradeline Company. I think they're a little bit more pricier than this company, and this company has a little bit more of what I look for. All right, and they're really cool to work with. So getting an authorized user is ideal for the simple fact that it's gonna help build your profile. And the number one key to having an authorized user on your profile is because it gives you age. So you're primarily looking for credit age, 14, 15 years, 20 if possible, right? Because when you're looking at age, the age itself is actually going to boost your score. The amount of limit on the authorized user, and I'm telling you guys based off my experience, the limit on the authorized user isn't actually going to impact how much you get when you apply for the bank, right? The primaries are what's going to impact you, right? When I talk about primaries, I'm still talking about these primary builders, right? I'm talking about current credit cards you have. I'm talking about if you have any intro cards, like let's say a Capital One, or you have a Discover or Credit One Bank. I know some of you are probably familiar with those names, but those entry level cards, which I would call around like tier 2 cards, right? They're entry level for students, beginners, those of you building your credit. Um, you want to have those primaries in the very beginning, and you also want to add some of these as well to help build your profile because they're looking for more information. The more information and the more history you can show them, the more comfortable they feel, right? When they're basically offering to lend you money, right? Now, it's one thing you got to keep in mind here, right? Because this community, we talk about how we are the original creditor. But when we're talking about playing the game, when we go right into the matrix, right, we're building the profile to play in the game, right? Although we technically are supposed to be getting the credit when we submit an application because we're the original creditors, right? The banks is just the middlemen. This information is to teach you how to play the game, right? Because if you can play this game well, they'll be able to speed up, this process, right, from freeing yourself from the matrix. Because that's the end goal, right? The end goal is for everyone to free themselves, be able to start a business that's profitable, using other people's money, because that's the ticket, right? That's the ticket. That way you'll be able to have more time to not invest in yourself, but also build generational wealth. So when we talk about submitting these applications and building your profile in favor of the banks, this is the stuff they're looking for. They're just looking to see, are you going to be, or have you been someone who's been a good debt payer, right? Are you good at paying debt? Because if you're good at paying debt to them, they're making interest off you, right? They're making more interest off you over periods of time versus someone who has a brand new profile. They don't know what your habits are like. This is why these banks make these decisions. They don't know if you are able to long term be able to pay them interest. Because that's what the banks are looking for. They're not really looking for to give you money. Remember, they don't have any money. All right. That's the reality, guys. Like, we know this, for those of you who've been in the community long enough, like, these banks don't have any money. They need our collateral to get the money. But what they need to make sure of is, can they make money off of you for a long time? That's what they're doing. That's the name of their game. And in order for them to do that, they want us to have all these profiles and all these trade lines and primaries so that we can go to the bank and then they're going to approve us for whatever limits that we're looking for, right? So authorized users in primaries are the name of the game when it comes to actually getting approved, right? Outside of having a clean payment history and no derogatories are the ticket. Because ultimately, like I said, it's their way of gauging how well of a debt payer you are. Are you a good debt payer or are you not? And have you been doing it for some time? Because if you have, they can see you're reputable, right? That you can see the history behind all of the payments you've made on time, and that the banks have been able to make interest off of you for X amount of time, and so that they can continue to extend more credit to you for that reason.
Quick question, Eric.
Yep,
Can you get late payments off?
absolutely. You can get anything off of your credit.
All right, just confirming.
Absolutely. You can get anything off of your credit report, guys, whether it's like, evictions, bankruptcies, everything is disputable on your credit. Everything is. And then credit score and utilization, right? We talked a little bit about how your credit score can be positively impacted by authorized users that give you age, and this is why, this credit system was built the way it was. Because think about it. If I'm 18 years old, I just got access to credit and I get my first secured card, or let's say my Kohl's card, and I've been using it for 6 months, I'm going to have a 680 to a 700 or above. At that point, I actually qualify, right? I qualify. But the reason why banks deny you and they give you all these, bogus reasons is because they don't have enough history on you. And that's their excuse to not extend you the credit. All right. It's an excuse to not extend you the credit for the simple fact that your credit score may qualify you for access to credit, but the ones that you're looking to get access to, they're not going to give to you for the simple fact that they're looking to see history. And that's why when I tell people your credit score is just one of the things they look at, right? Your FICO is separate from your actual credit profile. Because I want you to understand that FICO is a company, right? It's a completely separate business from your actual credit report. Your credit report consists of information, and the FICO is the score generated based off of the information, right? And they created this system, like I said, to manage risk, and that's all it is. It's nothing really to do with the fact that it's required, right? Because in a certain sense, when we deal with the banks and the matrix, it is required. But when we're dealing with it as creditors, it's not required, because at the end of the day, we are the original lenders. So when I say the credit score in the bank sense, it doesn't mean anything, because I've seen people get denied with 750s. I've seen people get denied with 780s for the simple fact that they have a light and a thin profile. And that's why I encourage you guys to use credit builders. I encourage you guys to get authorized users, because all of these things help you get there. All right. And then the reason why we're using age trade lines is because, think about it. They're technically trying to tell you that you have to be like in the game for so long to hit that 800 credit score, right? I recently learned that you need about up to 20, I think about 20 accounts to be at like 850 credit score and right, or 800 credit score and above, and have a really beefy profile, right? Because ultimately, in this particular scenario, when we're thinking about building our credit, the whole idea of our credit score and us being able to qualify for things is completely different from the information that's on it. Because the banks aren't really just looking at your credit score. The credit score, like I said, can look good. It could be a 750 and you'll still get denied. I've seen it happen. So I've helped so many people with this stuff, guys. And that's why I was encouraging, I was educate you guys on how a credit profile and structure works. Right? Yeah, someone's asking if this will be posted in school. Yeah, this video will be posted here in school, guys. Like I posted last week's videos. Absolutely. So you guys can be able to watch this. All All right. Serena asks, what type of trade lines are good to stack a short period of time without negatively impacting your reports? Um, I got a good one here, right? There's a good one that I share with you guys. It's really fast. This one boosted my score 30 points when I used it. It's this one-time payment, $100, give you $1,000 revolving line of credit. It's only a one-time payment, and it'll just show up on your credit report. And then every month you'll get credit for an on-time payment. I personally like this one. I mean, I use all of these guys. I have all of these, but I recommend that one for, short term. Um, the rest of these are helpful when it comes to helping with utilization, especially for those of you who are new to the credit space. If let's say right now your only credit limits on your profile are around $1,000, if you add an Ava credit builder and you get access to 2,500, then your total profile will say that you have 3,500 worth of credit limit because you'll have that 1,000 in your available credit cards plus the 35. So if you maxed out the $1,000 trade line or your $1,000 credit card, your utilization would not spike. It actually just serves as a buffer. This is helping you. So I always share this with you guys because these actually are helpful to you, and it's a win-win because not only are you protecting your utilization, you can also build your credit score, right? You can build your credit score. Second, it's adding information to your credit profile and you're getting payment history over time, right? You don't have any hard inquiries dealing with this stuff. You can cancel at any time, right? I don't ever recommend canceling it soon if you're building. You want to build, utilize it, and then if you want to cancel, you're more than welcome to. But I always encourage to keep them on until you've actually utilized them to their fullest extent, right? Like you've gotten your access to funding, you've gotten your access to, better credit lines, better lines of credit, better loans, etc. Right? So those are some of the really good ones, right? And personally, like I said, I have 6 of those. And I share them with you because I personally use them. I personally have good experiences with them. Same with all of the credit builders and all of the trade lines that I've shared with you guys because I've gone through it all. I've gone through purchasing trade lines directly through vendors, lost money, right? I bought like $1,000 worth of trade lines. It didn't work out, right? So I've gone through all types of experiences and I'm sharing the best of the best that I've had the best experiences with. I know you guys aren't going to lose your money investing in, right? Because you're always dealing with risk when it comes to trade lines, especially when you're getting it from a different source, like an outsider source. So when we're dealing with credit scores and utilization, your authorized users are helping with that. Your primaries are helping with that. And that's the key. So 10% to get max funding is recommended, always recommended. Why? Because they'll actually, not only will your score be a little bit higher, but they'll give you better limits when it comes to your utilization. You can get away with 30%, like I share in the credit campus. 30% is ideal. You can still get approved with 30%. It's all always going to come down to how much you have available. So if you have 5 credit cards and 2 of them are 50% maxed out and the others are below, 10%, you may be able to get away with it, right? But ideally, you want at least all of them at under that 30, right? You want them at least under that 30 because they see that you're not utilizing all your available limit and that you don't need it, right? So the secret in the name of the game is they must be able to see that you don't need money. And how do you show them that you don't need money? One, you don't have a lot of inquiries, meaning you're not applying a lot, right? Hence why you want to limit the hard inquiries per bureau. And 2, you're not utilizing all of your available credit. Guys, even if it's only $600, 700, even $300, to them, although it's $300 and then they see 100% utilization, in their eyes and in their system and their algorithm, they're going to deny you, even though it's only $300. And that's why I say understanding the game is going to help you strategically get access to that money. And this is the number one foundation when it comes to it. And this is why I'm always going to revisit this whenever you guys are looking to learn about credit stacking, right? Now, when you're dealing with credit stacking, you don't necessarily have to have business credit to do so. So I'm not going to cover the business credit, but what you do need to understand once you've got a solid profile, right? Let's say right now you're in the position where you've got no derogatories, your payment history is good, you've got some authorized users and your primary accounts, right? And your utilization's in a good spot, you've got good credit score, and you're ready to go to a bank and start applying, right? The next step that I want to point you guys in when you've met all these requirements, right, is you want to make sure that you have an LLC. So I cover this in the Business Fundamental Campus, right? And it's the reason why it's the second one, because I cover all of these specific topics. And when you guys go back and reference this checklist I put together for you guys, there's also a call here that covers it. But we discuss specifically, how much the minimum cost can be per state, right? Whenever you guys are applying for your LLC, you want to be mindful of two things, right? So this is very important. So when you're going through and applying for an LLC, the type of banks that you'll have access to are also going to be determined by the state that you apply in. So it varies state by state. There is no one solution fixes all. So if you have an LLC in the state of Massachusetts, the same banks that you're going to be getting access to are not the same banks someone in Ohio is going to have access to. All right. Same goes for California or Florida, right? Whatever state you're in, it varies. So here I share a thorough list of the filing costs that are associated with filing and applying for an LLC in various states, right? Remember, LLCs are completely free. What you're paying for is the state fee, right? The state is what's charging you to take care of these documents for your business. I recommend Delaware and Wyoming, right? For the simple fact that they offer, privacy, and one is great for building generational wealth and protection. A lot of benefits to that. But you're not limited to opening up an LLC in various states, right? Now, if you want to open it in your state, you're absolutely more than welcome to. You're not limited to. Just keep in mind that when you do open up your LLC, you want to be very methodical about it, right? I know a lot of people in Massachusetts who, I work with and are my clients. They don't even want to open up LLC in Massachusetts because the simple fact that it's the most expensive. It's $500. So they go right next door to New Hampshire. That's $100. That has even better tax benefits because New Hampshire is tax free, right? New Hampshire is a tax free state. So it has benefits and it's right next door. So the banks that are going to be in New Hampshire are going to be banks that they have access to in Massachusetts because a lot of it's regional. So there's a lot of strategy involved when it comes to getting your LLC, because that's the next thing that you want to do when your credit profile is optimized and your credit profile is where it needs to be based off of what I shared with you guys, right? So if you guys have covered all of, the requirements here and the establish your business profile, also available in the business funding campus. I share this checklist here. It's almost like a shopping list. So if you guys execute this well and 100%, there's no reason why you guys shouldn't be getting access to that kind of money, right? So regards to LLC states and filing, I recommend, you can go with your state completely fine. You're not limited to. Be mindful, like I said, of the banks that are around the area. You can do the research up front, right? I do share in this checklist which banks I recommend, getting started with. We got Chase, Navy Fed, Bank of America, Wells, PNC, Truist. So, you can look for states that relatively have these banks near them, right? Like I share the top banks. You want to have at least 1 to 3 that you start building relationships with. And what I mean by building a relationship is just open up a checking account, leave a little bit of money in there, or move your direct deposit from your current job into one of these banks, right? Because they just want to see income. That's your relationship. Your relationship is, what have we worked with you on, and how have you allowed us to make interest off of you? That's how the banks think. If you've been keeping your money in the bank for the last 4 or 5 months, they're like, okay, I made X amount of interest off this person. You know, we're gonna keep working with them. They're applying for credit cards and stuff. Like, we're gonna approve them. But those relationships are gonna come with you getting into the banks, right? Right? Because if you just go to Chase on day one and you're just asking them for money, you better hope you know someone in there, because it's not gonna be that easy, right? You better hope you know someone in there. So that's how it works. Awesome. I got some questions in here. Let me see. Switch. No, you can't switch your LLC from Mass to New Hampshire. Um, you can't switch it. You would have to create a whole new LLC. Right? So the question is, I have a brick and mortar in Mass. If you have a brick and mortar in Mass, like, your LLC can be in Wyoming, guys. Like, I need you guys to remember, like, how many of you guys have visited Walmart or visited Target? They're in every state. They're registered in only one. Target is in Minneapolis, right? The only reason I know that is because I worked at Target, right? I know their headquarters is in Minneapolis. So just because you have a brick and mortar in that location doesn't mean you're limited to, right? It just means that all of your state filings, all of the laws, all the regulations, taxes are all under that state. So you just have to understand how things work in that state. You're not limited to, right? You're not limited to. So, and that's the cool thing about it. And then if it comes down to it, if you really don't want to change your LLC, you don't want to go to, you can always do this thing called DBA. It's called doing business as, right? You can do business as, you can keep the LLC. You could be, let's say, I'm a business funding corporation and I want to do business as credit, credit checklists, LLC, right? I'm just coming up with names. But you can do business as, but you have to go through some paperwork to do that, right? And then from there you can rebrand. You can still rebrand, but in a lot of your agreements and contracts, if you're doing business and you grow, you're gonna have to state that in your documents, like, hey, I'm X, Y, and Z doing business as X, Y, and Z, because you have to be able to inform people. Because when you're registered with that state, your state only has your original name, and then on file they have you doing business as. But when you go to Secretary of State and you're pulling the original LLC to get information on it, they're going to the original name. And that's how that works. So there's ways you can change your name, and that's why I encourage you to make sure that you are using the correct name. The correct name is very important. And there's some tools you guys can use, and I give them to you guys here. I actually make it pretty easy for those of you looking to get into, business ventures like Airbnb. This NAICS code is actually really good. I have this for one of my businesses. I have this from our e-commerce business that I was running a couple years ago, and then I also use this for my consulting business. So I'm sharing low risk NAICS codes that you guys are more than welcome to use. And I always encourage getting into things like consulting, or just management whatsoever, for the simple fact that both of those are posed as low risk. All right. And when I mean high risk, is high risk are businesses that banks deem are a threat, right? They require They require upfront capital to start. They also require not just upfront capital, but they have a potential of losing money. For example, if you get into real estate, right, you're dealing with a business model that potentially gets impacted by inflation. There's interest rates go up and down. So to them, it's like it's a little too high risk for me, right? You're dealing with casinos, you got a casino business, you can be wiped out by one winner. So they look at it as high risk for the simple fact that, remember, these banks created all this stuff to determine whether or not they'll make interest off of you for long periods of time. Because the name of the game is, if they can make money off you for a long period of time, then they'll always be in business, right? Because I'm telling you right now, guys, if the entire world decided to just stay put, pull all their money out of the banks and not use them, instead we transact with each other, right? We transact with each other by giving each other cash, the banks would collapse. That's how much power we have, but people don't understand that they have that much power. The banks will collapse. We just need to pull out. We need to pull out of the banks, and that's it. But again, this is just information that everyone should understand so that they can learn how to navigate through this stuff. Because again, all of this stuff is just systems that were put in place in the matrix to make things harder and make things more of a challenge, because they know that only 10% of the people are going to go applying this stuff. Only 10% of people are going to get LLCs and get the right NAICS codes and submit and start bank relationships with some of the better banks. And, they know this stuff, right? They know this stuff. And that's why they made it so hard, right? I mean, think about it. I built the credit campus to help you guys get rid of credit problems, right? Because credit itself is the first roadblock. All it takes is one late payment, and all your opportunities are just down the hole. Like your ability to get an apartment, your ability to get even a simple credit card or a simple loan for an emergency, all because of credit. And it's not that hard if you understand how the system works, right? And that's really that. But in this particular case, we're looking at making sure that we pick the right name, because the name itself also changes the game, right? And I shared this before. How many of you guys have, if I was to ask you, without you ever knowing what type of business it was, what kind of business Lowe's is, or what kind of business TJ Maxx is, none of you will be able to tell me, because it's not specific, right? If I was TJ Maxx clothing store, all right, now I know what you are. So when you think about how these big companies are working and how they're operating, they're not specifying who they are, right? And if you pay close attention to how a lot of these companies also create their names, they're creating their names in different variations, right? You got T-Mobile uses like T-Mobile Inc. Then they have T-Mobile retailer. They have T-Mobile services. Like, they use different variations because they know that they can leverage it like that. And when you go into the bank and you're applying for a business line of credit as T-Mobile, and then you tell them that you're just an online electronic shopping store, right? Because what's T-Mobile doing, right? They're selling phones. They sell phones online, right? They're selling electronic services. So when they use this NAICS code, right? Let's say I'm selling clothes online. I want to start an e-commerce business. This is the ideal business code to use, because if you use something very specific, right? Let's say, for example, I decide to do business online and sell something, and I want to sell, a restaurant service online. I'm going to be high risk to them, because all they're doing is they're just going to plug that into the system, and the system will red flag you. Right? You guys being on the call today, like, you know more than the average banker. because half these bankers don't even know what any of this stuff means. They're just gonna ask you what the NAICS code is, and they're gonna plug it in. If you go in a bank and you ask a manager, like, how do you build your credit to get access to business funding? They don't know. I know this through experience. You'd be very lucky. You'd have to find someone seasoned, or someone who's been dealing with clients that handle large amounts, or they handle large lending services, right? Like you're talking about people like in the banking industry that are helping people get access to $1 million or more. Those are the relationship managers that know exactly what's going on. I've been in these branches and you'd be surprised, man. Like they don't know anything. So what you guys are learning from just covering these topics is more than the average, person in the public understands. And that's why, when you understand this stuff, you can manipulate your way into getting that money using their own game because it's a game they created. But they're not going to teach you this stuff in school. Let's see here.
Are you familiar with boutiques, Eric?
Boutiques? Oh yeah, I heard of them. Are you talking about boutiques like the ones that they'll help you make money?
Right, right, right,
Yeah, I heard about them. I heard about them a little bit. I didn't really dig into it. I know it's the next level to this. Like,
right.
there's a whole nother level to this. Like, guys, we're just talking about basic information. I don't think anyone's ready to dive into things like boutiques and SBA loans and getting crowdfunding and stuff like that. Like, that's next
Right,
level.
right,
We're
right.
talking, millions and millions on top of millions. Right now, we're going through like the basic foundational stuff that we should all be getting access to and escaping the matrix with, because it's there. It's a cheat code. You don't have to be working extremely hard to get this, and you don't need to be the smartest to get this stuff done, guys. Right? And I'll be the first to say, like, I know nothing. I'm just sharing things based off my experience. You don't need to be the smartest to get any of this stuff done. You just simply need to be able to work hard enough to apply it, right? Take what you learn, apply it, gain experience, and don't be surprised when the results come, right? All right. How important is it to have an accurate code? So you can change your NAICS code. So Serena asked a really good question. It's important to have an accurate code for the simple fact that it's the difference between you getting large amounts of money and less money, right? And there's ways for you to find out this information. I believe I recently learned this. I know it's NAICS code. Look up. You can do that. You can go to their website and search up businesses. To be able to tell you how many entities are in those type of NAICS codes. I mean, you can see here just the large number of U.S. entities with its professional, scientific, or technological service. Right, this website is cool for you to do a little bit of research and to also find out where the most popular businesses. Right, law offices use this NAICS code. So if you, let's say, for example, wanted to get into a payroll service business, this is the NAICS code that they're using in order to get into this business. So let's say we click on this, right? There's some companies here that you'll be able to see that are the top businesses by annual sales. So, it gives you information on the type of companies using these codes and, what type of services they offer and how well they're doing. Now, this is just a tool that, you guys can use to determine this stuff. But when you guys are trying to determine the industry you're getting into, I want you to keep things in mind. There's a couple things I want you to keep in mind is, if I were to give somebody the name of my business, can they tell what it is? If the answer is no, then you're heading in the right direction. But if you're telling me your business name and I can guess what type of business it is, it's not looking good. Why? Because if, let's say, your business doesn't go the way you want it to, you don't have much room to wiggle on, because now you're in a position where if I chose a business like, Eric's law firm, then at that point, I have to be a law firm at that point. Like I can't pivot from a law firm to a consulting business, right? Pay attention to these names. These are offices of lawyers, right? How many of these do you see with lawyer on it? None of them, right? None of them. I mean, we got offices of notaries, right? How many of these show notary? There's one here. But they're not limiting themselves, right? Engineering services. I'm just giving you guys examples, right? ABB Incorporated. Would you be able to guess that ABB Incorporated is an engineering service? Absolutely not. That's the idea you guys want to take when it comes to coming up with a business name, right? And that's why I'm sharing this. So that was a really good question. When it comes to how accurate your code has to be, your code has to be pretty accurate, right? You want to be as accurate as possible when it comes to picking the right low risk one, right? I had DNB ask about mine when I started this last year. Yeah, absolutely. Dun and Bradstreet will ask you about yours, but you can change your code, guys, as long as your name, remember that, as long as your name isn't limiting you, right? So when you look at ABB Incorporated, it's not limiting me because even though it's an engineering service, I can go to automotive services with this name by simply changing my code. Right? Because what you're doing is you're saving yourself from having to recreate a whole new LLC. That's why being a very general name, right, allows you. I mean, think about it. Tesla, right? Google. They're very general. Like Google can become a whole entire business, an entirely new business model if they wanted to. Because Google is not limited to anything related to being an online service. Does that make sense? Yep.
Yes, sir.
Anything low risk is good. Anything low risk is good for the simple fact that when you maintain a low risk NAICS code, it's so much easier for you to go in a bank and you're not stopping yourself in your tracks. Because that's one big mistake people make. Let's say you do have really good credit, you fix your profile, right? You've got your 700 plus, you've got all your primaries, your age, your limit, utilization's low. And then you go and apply with an NAICS code that's a high risk. You're looking to get that 50 to 200K. It's not going to happen because they're like, you're a little bit too high risk for us. That's how quickly it can go south. So that's really important, right? And then the next important thing, guys, is when it comes to getting access to this capital, right? I go over setting up your business framework, which is, getting your virtual address, right? You want to make sure that you get a business name that's well within a very reasonable name, right? Whatever name you decide, you can end it with consulting, management, solutions, enterprise, right? All of those are good as long as it's broad. And then you want to get your LLC once you've gotten your virtual address because you're going to use your virtual address to create your LLC. And this is also another important thing. Remember, guys, what I was saying earlier, whatever state you decide to register your business in, remember, not all banks service. So, like, sometimes, like, for someone who lives in New England, is not going to get the same access to Truist as someone who lives in Virginia. So if I register my business in Virginia, chances of me having access to a bank like Truist is much higher because that's where those locations are. They're more in the south, right? In the east or in the west, right? Versus Chase, where Chase is a lot more broad, right? Chase is everywhere. Some banks are more regional specific. So when you're determining where your business is, right? If you want it to be local, you have to be familiar with the area, be familiar with the banks in your local area. So, like, if those of you who are looking to help people get access to funding and that sort of thing, it's stuff to be mindful because there's a lot of people on the internet that will just, they'll post videos and say, with an LLC, you can go to the bank and they must give you 250K. I'm like, bro, it's not that simple. You have to really understand how all of it works. There's levels and there's a strategy behind all of it. So where your location is going to impact the banks you have access to, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So if you start an LLC, you can be strategic, guys. You can start an LLC in Virginia to get access to banks like Truist and a lot of those southern banks, and then you can open up a bank, an LLC, and register it in New Hampshire or register it in a northern state like Delaware and get access to another whole nother group of banks. You're not limited to it. You just have to be strategic, right? But the key is understanding how it all works, because people make the mistake of thinking, well, I'm gonna go and get an LLC, then I'm gonna go apply. I want to get money from Truist, or I want to get money from Bank of America, but my business is registered in Alaska, right? And then now they're going and applying, and then they're telling them that their business has to be in state or they have to be within the local region. That happens, guys. You go and you apply for business lines of credit, or you even try to open up a business bank account, they'll tell you. So that's why understanding your location and knowing what banks you want to go after, because this is mainly for people looking to get business funding, right? And this is why I'm sharing this specifically. Remember, I'm not trying to limit you guys to where you can open up your LLC or anything like that. I'm just sharing with you that if you guys want to max out your opportunity to get funding, it's all strategy. All of it is strategy. All right, so that's the most important part there, is just understanding the number one tactic of making sure it's in the right locations. And then if you're trying to get money from the best banks and you want to have versatility, where your LLC is makes a difference. It absolutely does. All right, so the rest of this, guys, is a little bit different, right? I always recommend having a website, and the business phone number and the email address is also helpful, but it's not mandatory, right? It's not mandatory. What I always recommend is having a website, for the simple fact that, how many businesses do you know of that are legit that don't have a website? It's very rare, guys. Most people want to see the website. If I told you right now, I can help you fix your credit, and you're like, oh man, can you share me a website and I could take a look at, all the info, and I tell you I don't have a website, would you feel confident in me helping you? It'd be a little bit different. And that's how, that's kind of how the banks look at it. Right. And you don't need anything fancy, guys. A one-pager website that's clean, it just gives you the information you need about your business. Like, that's all you need. And then step 5, we dive into business credit, which is different, right? So today we're talking about personal to get you business lines of credit. But this particular case, we're talking about building business credit, which we're not covering that today. We're covering how to leverage your personal, right? Your personal to get 50 to 200K, right? For business funding so that you can credit stack. So now that we covered that, right? We've covered the most important pieces, guys. Your credit needs to be where it needs to be. It needs to be set up and structured properly. The next step, you need an LLC with a good name, right? You need the basics of a business. You need a website. You need to make sure it's not a high risk business to the banks, and that all your documents are in order, right? Your article of incorporation, which you're gonna get when you set up your LLC, and then your EIN number, right? Which you should get from the IRS once you get your LLC. Then you'll go to the bank and start applying, right? And you want to start applying in a very methodical manner. So what I mean by that is, guys, all these banks pull from different bureaus. People make the mistake of not understanding this information. So when they go and apply for credit cards and then they start getting denied, they start thinking that they no longer can get approved for credit cards, which is not true. It just potentially means that they may have maxed out their inquiry polls for a certain bureau, right? And I'm going to go through a really quick example. So let's hit up TransUnion real quick. So let's say we're in TransUnion and I go through TransUnion and I start pulling credit cards for Wells Fargo, Discover, Chase, and then I start looking for more lines of credit, right? Let's say I want to get PenFed and Navy Federal. I may potentially start getting denied after 3 inquiries, right? Because let's say Wells Fargo pulls one, Discover pulls another, and then Chase pulls the other. Now you have specifically 3 inquiries on your credit file. And when you start getting denied for the other 2, no one's really quite understanding why. They just think they no longer getting approved. When in reality, let's say I've gotten Wells Fargo, Discover, and Chase approvals. Now I'm going to go to Equifax, right? I'm going to look and see what other banks I can get approved for, right? Credit card issues. Now you have Capital One, American Express, and Discover, right? And some banks pull all 3. A lot of this stuff is regional. But the information I'm sharing with you guys in this campus, I pulled from some pretty credible sources, right? And I show you guys right here. It's called credit boards. So when you pull up credit boards, the information it shares, I don't know why it's giving me a hard time. Hold up. Let's see if it'll pull up. Yep, here we go. Nope, not allowing me to do it. But and maybe it's because I'm outside of the country. It's probably not letting me do it, guys. But if you click on this link or go to credit boards allows you to actually see based off of a region, right? Let me just try it out because let me disconnect my VPN. See if this will work. Because I want to show you guys. Yeah, it's not working right now. Yeah, it's not working right now. But credit boards is pretty straightforward, guys. Once you click on it, takes you to the website. You'll basically go to credit pulls or credit I believe it is credit pulls. And you can search by year, you can search by bank, what is pulled and what bureau it pulled from. So, for example, I can go to the state of Alabama. Let's say you live in Alabama. You can go and click and filter Alabama and then pick, the year of 2024 to 2000 and filter all of the credit card applications people submitted and either got approved and denied for those past 4 years. And based off of that information, you'll be able to see specifically in your region what credit cards were pulled where, how much limits they got, what was their credit score at the time. I've even seen things where people were getting approvals for 5, 6K, and they had 17 inquiries, right? And it's crazy information because it's people giving real life feedback on credit card approvals. And it's different, like I said, from state to state. But that's why I shared this. I'm hoping, they didn't shut it down or anything like that. But it's a really good, cool source when it comes to finding this information. It's one of the places where I got all this info from, guys. I was able to determine like what banks pull from where, specific inquiries, as well as me applying for this stuff, guys, right? Obviously applied for a lot of, lines of credit, etc., loans. So I know specifically where a lot of these banks pull from because I personally have relationships with like Capital One, Citizens, Chase, right? And so forth. So I have some experience with some of these banks, but again, they're very regional based. So for me to sit here and tell you, like, hey, when you go and apply for a line of credit, through Discover, it only pulls Equifax. It's not true because it can pull Equifax for certain regions, and then another region it just randomly pulls like Experian or pull all three. I know Capital One 100% pulls all three. Capital One is like they'll hit you on all bureaus. If anyone has a Capital One card, they know this because they've seen it, right? Capital One pulls everything.
Capital One is evil.
Yeah, Capital One will pull everything, man. They'll pull your Equifax, TransUnion, Experian. I mean, there's ways where, I share some game here, guys, where literally you can go and freeze, right? So if you got an Apple card, right, you can go and literally by simply freezing your TransUnion and Equifax after a pre-approval, you can avoid a hard pull, right? You can get a pre-approval for your Apple card and then freeze both of them and then accept the pre-approval that they offer you. So if they pre-approve you for like 3K, before you accept it, freeze the bureaus, right? And you can avoid a hard pull. So there's some game there. There's ways where you can freeze your TransUnion report, then Barclays will pull Experian, right? But Barclays always pulls TransUnion. Most of the time they pull TransUnion. It's very rare I've seen them pull or Experian, sometimes for the business side, but they mainly TransUnion, right? Puller. Bank of America normally pulls Experian, right? So I share a lot of this stuff with you guys here. And what I always recommend to do is with this information, you come back and you look at this list and you're like, all right, well, I live in, let's say, Florida. All right, I'm next to a Chase. Let's pretend I'm next to a Bank of America, right? So now I got two banks with Experian pulls. Let me find a third, right? Let's say I want to go to another Experian. Let's say M&T Bank is in Florida as well. So I go to M&T, I got a Chase, right? And a Bank of America. Those are my three Experian banks. Then I'm gonna go to Equifax. I'm gonna hit up Citizen, right? Let's say Citizen is in Florida, and I'm gonna hit up Citizen. I'm gonna hit up another bank that pulls Equifax, Key Bank, and HSBC. Now I have another three pulls that I know for sure are usually gonna pull that area. Now, if you guys want to learn some real game, if you guys don't want any hard pulls, you guys don't want to worry about removing the hard inquiries, even though I teach you guys how, you guys can use this cheat code I use to also get to this information. I'm giving you guys game. So what I did to get some of this info is I froze all of my bureaus, all of them. I froze TransUnion, I froze Equifax, I froze Experian, and I started applying for credit cards at Citi, Citizens, Discover, and guess what? They would reach out to me and say, "Hey, we were unable to pull your credit because your Equifax is frozen." Now I know who they're pulling from. Please unfreeze your Equifax. So that's game, guys. So like you guys can use that strategy. You won't get any hard inquiries. If you guys want to determine, what regions you guys are getting this information from, or if you want to just build a list of banks you want to pull, lines of credit from, freeze all your accounts, start submitting applications. They're going to deny you and let you know that you need to unfreeze it. And then you'll find out where they're trying to pull from.
Make them tell on themselves.
Huh?
Make them tell on themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they're going to. They're absolutely going to. Right. But, outside of that, guys, credit stacking is one of those things that's very strategic. You have to go through and actually leverage the information here and what I covered in the very beginning is important. Get your credit straight. Make sure your profile is in a really good place. Another important piece is, if you guys want a really quick ticket to a lot of high limits, the relationship manager is a key, right? And the reason I say that is because although it's pretty difficult to get access to these guys, like I have one for Chase and I have a couple other connects that know relationship managers and like banks like Bank of America, but it's difficult to get the good ones because a lot of the relationship managers, guys, my experience, they know nothing. I'm just giving you a raw, experience. They know nothing. Like they've probably been in the banking industry for 5-6 years and they just know how to review the policies and they're good at that stuff and point you to the application website on the internet. They're like, oh yeah, absolutely, just apply on this website, right? They're never gonna give you the information. So you have to be pretty smooth at trying to find out who to talk to. Like the way I was able to get access to Chase, our relationship manager, so she deals with the top level accounts. That's how I got that info. Right. She specifically told me, she's like, yeah, we deal with like accounts that, we're lending million or more. I said, but I can point you in the right direction with the right people. So she points me in the right direction with certain people just for me to find out that those certain people know nothing. So, and the relationship manager that she pointed me to, he was no good. So I have to go back to her. And I told her, I say, look, I want to deal with you personally because I feel like I'm a little more advanced than a lot of the relationship managers you're trying to share with me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Hold on one sec. I gotta mute someone real quick.
You went just good.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, so I'm a little bit more advanced when it comes to this information than the relationship managers of the banks. So you have to deal with people who really know what they're doing and are helping people. And there's people out there that are helping a lot of these business funding companies and credit repair companies with their clients. Like there really is. But finding them is a challenge. And two, the second difficult part about it is they're going to actually charge you an arm and a leg to actually execute this. Right? You're talking 10%. This information I'm giving you guys, like this is the same thing that they're doing. The only difference is they have a little bit more access to relationship managers. And it's not make or break. You guys can go and run these plays yourself without paying any of them, right? So you get approved for 100K at a bank, or you get approved for 100K directly through, one of these companies. You're gonna be paying them about 10K for that approval. I mean, what can you do with 10K? You reinvest it into something else. I know 10K you could furnish a one-bedroom Airbnb unit for 10K. So I'm just sharing this with you guys because, it's info I'm getting. And the more I get, the more I'm going to keep adding to the university because the goal here is for you guys to take this info and execute it so that you can have success with it. Right. But then when it comes to the perfect funding sequence, the reason I put this down here is because there's preparation that takes place before you go into the bank. And what I mean by a relationship, you're putting a little bit of money into it. You gotta put a little bit of money into the bank account. So for example, if I just set up a bank account with Chase, you want to put at least 1K to 2K if possible in it so that when it comes time to applying for the lines of credit, they see you have a little bit of liquid. They feel a bit more confident with you. And that's the secret. Right? And you can apply like 10 days after you submit the deposit. If you have some liquid sitting around, guys, you got like 5K, you got 2K, you set up a Chase account, you put a little bit of that money in there, let it sit for 2 weeks, and you start applying for them, they're going to approve you guys. But this is information you need to know. So by simply just going into that bank and not putting any money in it and then applying, I've seen it happen. They're gonna hit you with you either don't have enough liquid in the bank, or you actually don't have any history with us. I've seen it happen. Right. That's personally for me and with clients, right? And we're talking about clients that have good credit. They've got everything situated, and we have to learn that like they like it when you put a little bit of money in there. And you don't necessarily have to have this laying around, guys. You can start now by moving your direct deposits to your business checking account. I always recommend stop using personal, guys. I have no more personal bank accounts. Everything is business. Cash flow, anything I bring in, I don't care what it is. Cash flow, anything that you bring in, do not put it in your personal, because your personal doesn't benefit you. You have cash flow going into any business account. You can leverage that. That's how you leverage it, right? I shared with you guys before that my name is an LLC, right? I shared that with you guys. It's an LLC now. So my business, my actual bank accounts are business bank accounts with my name on it. Now, instead of it being a personal account with my name on it, it's a business account with my name on it. And have cash flow going to a business bank account, which gives you 5-10x the limits that you would on your personal. That's very important to keep that in mind, especially when you're very new to it. If you have a little bit of capital laying around, it's gonna help you. And if you don't have a lot of money laying around, guys, like I said, use your 9 to 5 income. They just want to see cash flow, deposits. If you have deposits every couple of weeks, you have deposits weekly, whatever that may be, it'll help you. It'll definitely help you. Right? So now that I covered all that, right? I covered the basics to getting started. Gotta have a strong personal profile. You don't need business credit, and you don't need to have an established business to do this, guys. Once you've gotten that done, you've got a good business name, you've got your LLC. Once you get your LLC paperwork, you start building relationships with these banks. Either put a little bit of money in there, start having direct deposits sent into these bank accounts, and then you can start submitting applications. Right? Did you guys have any other questions? Did you have any questions you wanted to ask or wanted me to revisit? I know I was answering questions as the call went. I know Serena has some really good questions. Does anyone have anything they wanted to cover?
Yeah, could you revisit? I tuned in late when you guys were talking about. Like, it seems like a win with Capital One. I didn't hear the whole story. Like what happened with the gentleman earlier.
With Capital One, in regards to
I don't know if it was a remittance or what the situation was. I came in late and it seemed like somebody got a win with the Capital One.
no, I was saying that with Capital One, I helped a couple case dismissals for debt collectors. There was some debt
Oh,
collectors attempting to collect a Capital One debt that was sold. So it wasn't Capital One that was pursuing the debt. It was a debt
yeah, the fake
collector.
firm.
Correct.
Okay.
Called Rubin and
All right,
Rothman.
so I
They're like,
didn't.
yeah, they're just like a number one go-to, I guess, for Capital One.
And from your experience, Capital One is quite difficult on the remittance process, or that's something you're familiar with?
No, it's case by case. Remember, it's like credit repair,
Okay.
right? Some
Right.
people are gonna have no trouble disputing Capital One. Others are, you know.
Gotcha.
It's very case by case. There's no one shoe fits all. I just know the process works. Some may need to apply the second and third round. Others may only need the first. It's very case by case.
And I had a couple questions for you. I don't know if it's something I should speak to you on in private on or bring it up in the class in regards to like your services. I haven't. It may be on the website to answer to my questions, but I was wondering since I got you online.
Absolutely. Yeah, if it's currently not related to, the topic of the class, then we can
Gotcha.
we can discuss about it over um in private. But right now I wanted to clear up any questions related to, anything we discussed over the call so that,
Gotcha.
when I post this video on the campus, anyone that may have the same questions can have the answers to it. Anyone have any questions? Wanted to cover? I know I covered a lot of information. I shared some game on how you guys can find out what banks, what bureaus the banks pull in your specific region, how to get all of it started. Because remember, credit stacking is not a one shoe fits all. You're going to be told that on the internet. The social media is going to sell you that. And tell you, you just need an LLC and a whole bunch of easy stuff. That's not how it works. You need to understand how these banks work, how the regional banks work, location, business name, right? They're just gonna tell you that stuff to clickbait you. So when you work with them, they're gonna inform you of this stuff later on. But this is all the game that they have, right? Like I said, the only difference between where you guys can be versus what they're offering is some of them do have really good relationships with some of the managers, and they have really good people in the inside that have been helping people with applications. But I'm telling you, those people are tough to come around. They're tough to come around. You have to really put in the work and be on the ground with them. And that's, like I said, something I'm working on. Like I said, I've already gotten one with Chase, but it takes time, guys. A lot of this stuff you got to put in the work for. So if you guys didn't have any questions, I won't take up any more. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if you ever heard of the shotgun method. Like, is the shotgun method basically opening up the different browsers, but how you just showed us that each knowing what company pulls from what bureau, just having all of those up basically at the same time and then like applying?
Yeah, so I learned of the shotgun method early. I actually share it here in the campus, but it's a pretty old school.
Okay.
It's a pretty old school method. And just like when we cover the credit material, and I shared the credit play for the 24-48 hour Experian play, and then all of a sudden, like, they just stopped doing it. It's possible that could happen, right? Like, things change. So it's possible that the banks adapted to it, but it's very regional based. So if you do decide to apply like the shotgun method, you kind of want to understand what banks you're applying for, or what regions they're, and who they pull from. And that's why I would recommend using these tools here before doing that.
Perfect.
The
Thank you.
shotgun method is pretty old school, though. It's like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty, it's a good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a good question. It's pretty old school. It's like, I didn't personally look for any other online solutions. I just know that typically once banks and these companies start to learn that people are onto things, they start changing the game up. They make it a little bit harder. Any other questions, guys? Awesome. Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure connecting with each and every one of you guys again. As always, tomorrow we're going to be diving deep into 1099-Cs. I know piggying back off of the 1099-A instructions, we still didn't even quite get to complete that. So I'm going to continue that call with the bottom half of the instructions. And be simply covering that on tomorrow's call. If you make it, I'll see you there. If I don't, no need to worry, guys. I record the calls so that you guys can have the opportunity to obviously continue your day-to-day life and come back and rewatch this stuff, right? So outside of that, like I said, I'm grateful for you all, and we will reconnect tomorrow. If you guys have any questions, just drop it in the chat. I'm going to get back to you guys as soon as possible.
All right, take care. Appreciate you.
Awesome, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.
Good night.
You too. Bye.